While backpacking, I was kidnapped by Bigfoot. But that wasn't the worst part. I filmed the Sasquatch speaking to me. And even that isn't the most unbelievable thing I captured, because what it says on my footage will completely destroy everything you thought you believed about what's hiding in our forests. I was already being carried by Bigfoot when I finally managed to pull my phone from my jacket pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it twice before I got the camera app open. But somehow I managed to start recording. The screen showed exactly what my eyes were seeing, but my brain refused to process. Thick, dark fur moving in rhythm with powerful strides, and beyond that, the forest rushing past in a blur of green and brown. The Sasquatch suddenly slowed its pace, and I felt its grip shift slightly. We had entered a section of forest where the trees grew more sparsely, allowing more light to filter through. The creature paused completely for a moment, its head turning left and then right, as though checking for something. I could hear its breathing more clearly now, could hear the faint sound of something that might have been sniffing. That was when I realized my hands were completely free. The creature was holding me securely around my waist and supporting my weight, but my arms had full range of motion. My right hand held my phone. My left hand was braced against the creature's forearm, but not held. The bear spray was still clipped to my belt on the opposite side from my wounded leg. Could I actually use the bear spray, or would moving provoke it in the wrong way? I did not think. I reacted. I twisted hard to the left, using my core strength to wrench my body in the opposite direction from the creature's grip. For one startled moment, I felt the hold loosen, and then I was falling. I hit the ground hard, knocking the wind from my lungs. But next, the slash came faster than I could track, a blur of motion that caught my right thigh about 6 inches above the knee. I felt the impact and the immediate burning sensation, and then my leg buckled and I was falling again. I hit the ground on my side this time, and the phone flew from my grip, landing about 3 feet away with the camera still pointing back toward me. I scrambled for it immediately, ignoring the fresh blood soaking through my pants, and managed to grab it just as the Sasquatch approached. I pointed the camera up at it, capturing the moment it stopped about 5 feet away, and crouched down to my level. What would it do now that it was close and I was filming everything? Its face filled the frame. I could see individual hairs, could see the dark skin beneath the fur around its eyes and mouth, could see the way its nostrils flared with each breath. Its eyes were not entirely black as I had thought initially, but very dark brown, and they were looking directly at me with unmistakable intelligence. And then it spoke. The sound that came from its throat was rough and clearly effortful, but the words were English. It told me not to run. The pronunciation was strange, the cadence off, but the meaning was absolutely clear. At the time, I thought hearing it speak was the most impossible thing I'd ever experienced. I was wrong. What it told me later about why it took me was the part I didn't understand until the very end. I stopped breathing entirely for a moment. The creature reached up with one massive hand and tapped its own chest twice, a deliberate gesture that seemed almost human. It said again that I was safe, spacing the words out carefully as though making sure I understood each one. Could this be a warning or a test of whether I could understand it? I could not respond. I could not move. I could only lie there on the forest floor, bleeding and stunned, while the phone captured everything. The Sasquatch reached toward me slowly, giving me time to see the movement coming. When I did not resist, it carefully slid one arm beneath my shoulders and another beneath my knees, avoiding my wounded leg. It lifted me with the same ease as before, cradling me this time rather than carrying me tucked under one arm. The position felt absurdly gentle, given the circumstances, almost protective. As it started walking again, I kept the phone raised and recording, though my hands had begun to shake again. The Sasquatch did not try to stop me from filming. It simply adjusted its path and continued moving deeper into the forest. After several minutes of silence, it spoke again. The words came slowly, each one seeming to require effort and concentration. It told me that I must watch. Then it said that I must understand. The sentence structure was simple, almost childlike, but the intent behind the words felt weighted and serious. I found my voice for the first time since it had spoken. I asked where we were going. My words came out hoarse and uncertain. Would it answer, or leave me stumbling blindly into the unknown? The Sasquatch did not answer immediately. It continued walking for another 30 seconds before responding that we were going to a safe place. The pronunciation of safe had improved slightly from the last time it used the word, as though it was practicing. I asked why it had taken me. This question seemed to confuse it, or perhaps it simply did not know how to answer in English. It made a low sound in its throat that was not quite language, but conveyed something like consideration or uncertainty. Finally, it said that I would see. We crested a ridge and began descending the opposite side, where the terrain became rockier. Boulders the size of cars jutted from the earth at irregular intervals, many of them covered in thick coatings of moss and lichen. The Sasquatch navigated between them with practiced ease, never hesitating about which path to take. This was familiar territory for it, clearly somewhere it had traveled many times before. If it knew these rocks so well, did that mean danger or sanctuary lay ahead? After another 10 minutes, we reached an area where the rock formations became more dramatic, creating a series of natural walls and corridors. The Sasquatch turned sideways to fit through a narrow gap between two massive stones, adjusting me carefully to avoid scraping me against the rough surfaces. On the other side of the gap, the space opened into a small clearing surrounded by rocky outcrops. And there, partially hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines and nestled into the base of a cliff face, was the entrance to a cave. The opening was roughly 8 feet tall and perhaps 6 feet wide, large enough for the creature to enter without ducking too much. The darkness beyond the entrance was complete, revealing nothing of what lay inside. The Sasquatch paused at the threshold, making another of those low vocal sounds that seemed to serve as communication. Something answered from inside the cave. The sound was similar to what the Sasquatch carrying me had made, but higher pitched and slightly more melodic. A moment later, a shape emerged from the darkness of the cave entrance, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Who or what was coming out to meet us, and would it be friend or foe? The second Sasquatch was distinctly female, slightly smaller than the male, but still easily 7 feet tall. Her fur was lighter in color, more brown than black, and her facial features were less heavy, almost delicate by comparison. She moved with fluid grace as she stepped into the dim light, and her eyes fixed on me immediately. I raised the phone instinctively, capturing her full image as she approached. She did not react to the phone at all, did not seem bothered or curious about it. Her attention remained entirely on me, her expression neutral and assessing. The male spoke to her in a mixture of English words and those low vocal sounds. I caught fragments: human, show, understand. The female responded in the same hybrid language, her voice clearer and more controlled than the male's. She used the word dangerous, and I heard concern in her tone. They were having a conversation about me while I recorded the entire exchange. The male carried me toward the cave entrance, and the female backed up to allow us passage. As we moved from dim forest light into the darkness of the cave, I felt primitive fear surge through me again. Every instinct screamed that entering that cave meant I would never leave it. I stiffened involuntarily, and the male felt the change in my body language. He paused just inside the entrance and said again that I was safe, his tone insistent. Could I trust this warning, or was it a final trick before something irreversible happened? The cave tunnel extended back only about 15 feet before opening into a much larger chamber. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized there was actually light inside, filtering down from gaps in the rock ceiling high above. The chamber was roughly circular, maybe 30 feet in diameter, with a ceiling that reached 20 feet at its highest point. The floor was surprisingly flat and covered in a layer of dried vegetation that might have been deliberately placed there. The male set me down carefully near one wall of the chamber, supporting me until I had my balance on my good leg. The female entered behind us, moving to the opposite side of the space where she settled into a sitting position with her back against the rock wall. The male remained standing between us, his presence feeling less threatening now, and more like a buffer or intermediary. I kept filming, panning the camera around the chamber to capture as much detail as possible. There were no signs of fire pits or cooking, no bones or carcasses, no primitive tools. The space felt more like a shelter than a den, temporary rather than permanent. In one corner, I could see what appeared to be more dried vegetation piled into a nest-like structure. The two Sasquatch began communicating again, their voices echoing slightly in the enclosed space. The male gestured toward me several times while speaking, and I heard him use what sounded like the word see. The female responded with longer sentences, her tone questioning or perhaps argumentative. I caught the words many and kill and human. Were they plotting against me or warning me about something far worse? The male shook his head, a gesture that was startlingly human-like, and responded with words I could partially understand. Humans destroy. Humans cut. He made a sweeping gesture with his arm that might have indicated the forest beyond the cave. The female leaned forward slightly, her dark eyes moving between the male and me. She spoke directly to him using more of the vocal sounds than English, but then she switched languages and said something that froze me in place. She said that many humans come with guns. The clarity of her pronunciation was shocking. Her accent was still present, but the words were perfectly understandable. She had been listening to the male's attempts at English and had demonstrated that her own ability was significantly better. I found my voice again and asked if they were going to kill me. The question came out steadier than I expected, though my hands still shook as I held the phone. Would honesty save me or mark me for something I couldn't escape? The female looked directly at me for the first time since entering the chamber. She said no, then she said that if they wanted to kill me, I would already be dead. The bluntness of the statement, combined with the accuracy of the observation, made me lightheaded. The male moved slightly to one side, allowing a clearer line of sight between the female and me. He seemed to be deferring to her, acknowledging her authority in this situation. He spoke again, explaining something to her in their hybrid language, and I heard my own behavior described in fragments. Alone, quiet, no gun, watched. The female listened, then responded with a question that included the word why. The male appeared to struggle with his answer, gesturing toward my phone and saying something about show and truth and others. I was beginning to understand. They had not taken me randomly. They had been observing me, had seen that I was alone and unarmed beyond the bear spray. They had watched how I reacted when I found the footprint, had seen me photograph it rather than run immediately, and they had made a choice to reveal themselves, to bring me here, for a specific purpose. What purpose? And could I survive learning what it was? The female stood and moved closer, though she maintained a distance of about 10 feet. She asked me what the phone was. The question was clear and direct, with none of the halting pronunciation the male used. I explained that it was a camera, that it recorded pictures and video. I said that I had been filming everything since the male took me. She nodded, another human gesture that felt surreal coming from a creature that should not exist. She said that was good. She said that I needed to record so others would believe. The male interjected with something in their vocal language, and the female responded sharply, her tone taking on an edge that made him step back slightly. There was clearly hierarchy here, social structure, and authority. The female was in charge, and the male had acted without full approval by taking me. If I misread their social rules, could it cost me my life or my freedom? She turned back to me and began to speak more freely, her words careful but increasingly confident. She explained that they had been watching humans for a long time, that they understood human behavior better than humans understood theirs. She said that most humans who came to the forest brought noise and fire and weapons that they came to hunt or destroy. I asked why they thought I was different. The male answered this time, his English improving through repeated use. He said I moved softly, that I stopped to look at small things. When I found the footprint, I did not call others or prepare weapons. He said I looked with wonder, not with hunting eyes. She began to explain their situation, speaking in a mixture of English and gestures when words failed her. She said that their territory was shrinking, that humans were pushing deeper into the forest with machines that cut down trees and roads that brought vehicles and noise. She said that every season the safe places became smaller and fewer. The male added details, his English becoming more fluid as he relaxed into the conversation. He described hearing the sound of chainsaws from distances that used to be silent. He mentioned fires that humans left burning, smoke that carried for miles and drove animals away from their territories. He said that humans built structures that remained, permanent violations of spaces that used to belong to the forest. The female continued, explaining that their kind had always avoided humans, had learned over generations how to remain hidden and undetected. She said they understood human patterns, knew when hiking season brought more people into the mountains, knew which areas to abandon temporarily and which remained safe. But now, she said, there was nowhere left to go that humans would not eventually reach. I asked how many of them there were. The female hesitated before answering, and I saw calculation in her eyes as she decided how much to reveal. Finally, she said that there were not many, that their numbers were small, and that losing territory meant losing the ability to find food and shelter without human contact. If their numbers were dwindling, could I survive long enough to deliver the warning, or would I be their last link to humanity? The male explained that they moved against the wind when traveling to avoid leaving scent trails that dogs could follow. He said they never used the same path twice in short periods, and that they cached food in multiple locations to avoid drawing attention to any single area. He described watching hunting parties from concealed positions, learning their patterns and techniques in order to avoid them more effectively. The female said that they heard the stories humans told about them. She used the word Bigfoot with clear distaste, pronouncing it carefully as though it left a bad taste. She said humans made them into monsters in stories, creatures that attacked and killed and terrorized. She said the stories were wrong, that they avoided conflict unless humans pursued them into places where retreat was impossible. I asked if they had ever hurt anyone before. The question hung in the air between us for a long moment. The male looked at the female before answering. She gave a slight nod, granting permission. He said that sometimes humans came too close, tracking them deliberately or accidentally, crossing into their shelter areas. He said they defended themselves when cornered, but that they did not hunt humans. He said most humans who claimed to have been attacked had actually been warned away and had refused to leave. Was I being spared because I was cautious, or because I had something they needed? The female added that some humans came looking for them with weapons and traps, intending to capture or kill for proof. She said those humans were dangerous, and that they defended their families from danger. The way she said families made my chest tighten. These were not solitary creatures or mindless animals. They had social bonds, relationships, and communities. I asked what happened to the humans who came with weapons. Neither Sasquatch answered immediately, and I decided not to push the question further. Instead, I asked what they wanted me to tell other humans. What message was worth the risk of revealing themselves to me and allowing me to record evidence of their existence? Would the message save their kind, or mark me as a messenger who could never return to the world I knew? The female leaned forward, her dark eyes intense and focused. She said they did not want proof. That proof would bring more humans, more hunters, more people who wanted to capture or study or own them. She said they wanted humans to stop looking, to stop pushing deeper into the remaining wild spaces, to leave them alone so they could leave peacefully. The male nodded agreement and added that they wanted humans to know they were not monsters, that they did not want conflict or contact, that they wanted only to exist in the spaces that remained, to move through the forest without being pursued, to live without fear of discovery. I pointed out the contradiction. I said that showing my recording would prove they existed, which would bring exactly the attention they wanted to avoid. The female acknowledged this with a tilt of her head that was remarkably expressive. She said they had debated this, that the male had argued for taking me, and she had been against it initially. The male spoke up then, his voice carrying conviction despite the rough pronunciation. He said humans would continue pushing into their territory regardless of whether proof existed. He said that, without understanding, humans would keep coming as enemies. But if humans knew that they were intelligent, that they could speak and think and feel, perhaps some would argue for protecting the wild spaces that remained. Could my recordings truly change human behavior, or would it only paint a target on them? The female said it was a desperate choice, that they were running out of options. She said their previous territory, where they had lived for many years, had been cleared for development 3 seasons ago. She said they had moved to this area, but that they had already seen survey markers on trees and heard machinery in the valleys below. She said they would have to move again soon, but that there was nowhere left to move to within their traditional range. I asked why they thought anyone would believe my recording. I said that every piece of Bigfoot evidence ever presented had been dismissed as fake or hoax, that people were conditioned to disbelieve. The female gestured at my phone and said that this was different, that I had recorded from the beginning, that the footage showed continuous time and movement, that it captured them speaking. She said that some would still refuse to believe, but that others would question. She said questioning was enough, that doubt about their nature might translate into doubt about whether destroying habitat was worth the risk. It was, I realized, an incredibly sophisticated understanding of human psychology and media. They had thought through the implications, had considered how humans would react, and had made a calculated decision based on weighing risks against potential benefits. The intelligence required for that level of strategic thinking was staggering. If they were that smart, could I keep up? Or would one wrong move ruin everything? The male moved closer to me then, closing the distance between us in 2 long strides. I instinctively recoiled, pressing my back against the cave wall. The female reacted immediately, making a sharp vocalization that stopped the male in his tracks. She stood and placed herself partially between us, her body language clearly protective of me rather than him. She spoke to him in their vocal language, her tone sharp and authoritative. The male stepped back, making a gesture that might have been an apology or submission. The female turned to me and said that I was not to be frightened, that the male sometimes forgot his size and strength. The interaction reinforced what I had already begun to suspect. The female was not just a member of their group, but the decision-maker and authority figure. The male deferred to her judgment, and she enforced boundaries even with her own kind when it came to my safety. If they had wanted to harm me, she would not have intervened to prevent intimidation. The male spoke again, explaining that he had only wanted to see the phone more clearly, to understand what it showed. I held it up and turned the screen so they could both see it, showing them the live view of what the camera was recording. Both creatures leaned in to look, their expressions fascinated. Could showing them the footage strengthen my safety, or inadvertently create suspicion? The female asked if I could show them what had been recorded earlier. I navigated to the camera roll and played back footage from the beginning, starting with the shaky clips of being carried through the forest. Both Sasquatch watched intently, their eyes tracking the images on the small screen. When the playback reached the moment where the male had slashed my leg, he made a low sound of what might have been regret. The female watched herself emerging from the cave and nodded with apparent satisfaction at how the footage had captured both of them clearly. When the playback caught up to the present moment, she looked at me and said that humans would see this and know the truth. I asked what would happen to them after I showed people the recording, whether they understood that humans might come looking for this exact cave, might track them to this specific location. The female said they would be gone before I even left the forest, that this cave was temporary shelter, one of many places they used but did not stay in permanently. She said humans would find an empty cave and no trail to follow. She said they had been evading human tracking for generations and knew how to disappear. Could I believe that they could vanish so completely, or would I inadvertently lead danger to them? The male added that they would move far away, to places where humans rarely traveled. He said there were still some areas remote enough to avoid regular contact, though they were difficult to reach and offered less abundant food sources. I asked if I could help them somehow, beyond delivering their message. The question surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise them. The female studied me for a long moment before responding. She said that the recording was helpful enough that if it changed even a few human minds about wild spaces, it would be worth the risk. She paused, then added that if I wanted to help further, I should speak truthfully about what I had experienced, that I should not embellish or make them more frightening, but also should not make them seem harmless or approachable. She said humans needed to understand that they were intelligent beings who deserved respect and distance, not creatures to be sought out or befriended. The male said that humans who came looking to make contact were as dangerous as humans who came to hunt, because both refused to respect boundaries. He said the greatest gift humans could give them was absence, the gift of being left alone in the spaces that remained. If respect meant distance, could I truly advocate for absence? And would anyone listen? Time had become difficult to track inside the cave, but I could see from my phone that nearly 2 hours had passed since the recording began. The battery indicator showed 41% remaining. My wounded leg had stiffened, and I knew standing would be difficult. As though reading my thoughts, the female asked if I could walk. I said I was not sure, but that I would try. The male moved to help me, offering his arm for support. I hesitated only briefly before accepting, using his solidity to pull myself upright. Pain shot through my injured thigh as I put weight on it, but the leg held. I would be able to walk, though slowly and with difficulty. The female said it was time for me to leave, that I had recorded enough, and that staying longer increased risk for all of us. She said the male would take me part of the way back toward where he had found me, but that he would leave me before I reached any human trails. She said I must walk the final distance alone to avoid creating a track that could be followed back to them. I asked if I would ever see them again. The female said no, that after this they would avoid any area where I traveled. She said this was goodbye, that we would never meet again, and that I should consider myself fortunate to have survived an encounter that most humans did not walk away from. If this was the last time, could I carry the memory accurately, or would it fade into disbelief? The male gestured toward the cave entrance, indicating it was time to go. I took a last look around the chamber, making sure my phone captured the space completely. Then I turned and began hobbling toward the tunnel, the male walking slowly beside me to match my reduced pace. The female remained in the chamber as we left, her silhouette framed against the dim light from above. She raised one hand in what might have been a farewell gesture, though I could not be certain. I raised my phone in response, capturing her final image before the tunnel's darkness obscured the view. The male supported me as we navigated back through the narrow gap in the rocks and into the forest beyond. The sun had shifted considerably, creating long shadows that suggested late afternoon. He helped me walk for perhaps 20 minutes, moving in a direction that I vaguely recognized as back toward the trail system I had started from that morning. When we reached a small clearing where fallen logs created natural benches, the male stopped. He said that I must go alone from here, that the trail was less than half a mile downhill. He told me to walk slowly and rest when needed. Then he said I must speak the truth about what I had seen, must show the recording to others, must tell them that his kind wanted only to be left in peace. I promised that I would tell the truth exactly as it had happened. The male seemed satisfied with this. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at me. He said he was sorry for hurting me, pronouncing the words more clearly than he had earlier. He said it was necessary to stop me from running, but that he had tried to be careful. I stood alone in the clearing, my phone still recording, and looked around at the empty forest. For a moment I questioned whether any of it had actually happened, whether trauma and blood loss might have caused hallucination. Then I looked down at my torn and bloodied pants, felt the burning pain in my thigh, and checked my phone's camera roll to confirm that hours of footage were stored there. I was a backpacker who thought I knew the forest. Now I know better. Now I know that we share these mountains with beings far more remarkable than we ever imagined, and that we are pushing them toward extinction through ignorance and expansion.